Hello, this is Erica Marilyn, the founder of Perfect Legal Video, and I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm in the Worcester area, and we are very fortunate to have her with us every week to discuss issues in both family and real estate law. And many of these issues and bits of information save us tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're one of those people that needs that advice at this time. So, we are looking forward to talking today about how family law is not really like you see on TV. And I want to welcome you to the show today, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So let's talk about it. I'm sure when you first sit down with people, they have a lot of misconceptions and they've heard about how it should go in court by what they've seen on TV or maybe even somebody that they know that's been through it already. And is this true? Do you see a lot of that?
I see them more often than not, and it's always quite humorous. It's funny because just starting off with, court itself. If you're in probate court, we're making oral arguments. You don't get to talk at all. So that's going to be the first misconception: is you don't get to talk. You're not going to be on the witness stand. This is an evidentiary hearing. So let's stop there, because all too often they think that's what's going to happen. And that is how I describe it for a trial, but it's never for the first hearing that we go in front of the judge. Again, all you're saying is your name. So that's always a big thing, like, well, you got to prepare me. For what? For you to sit there and look pretty? Because that's what your job is to do. So that's usually the biggest and easiest one to overcome. And after the first or second time, they're like, oh, yeah. And so when you get to trial, I'm like, no, now this kind of looks like what's on TV. You're actually going to get on the stand. Really? And I was like, wait a minute, I wasn't expecting that, because I'm so used to, taking a step back and just standing next to you. That's the biggest one, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know if people realize that you really only answer the questions. And even if you want to go on and clarify, or you hear somebody else on the other side say something you don't disagree with, you're not allowed to jump in. And there's not this big fight in the court over you talking out of turn. it is a lot different. And those people that think it goes that way, you see them in the court sometimes. They're usually the ones representing themselves. And, they get shut down pretty quickly, don't they?
They do. And after you get slapped the first or second time with the judge, you'll learn. But it's definitely different. I mean, you just walk in and just, a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, well, I can get divorced, or I can have this agreement. I'll just go in front of the judge and it'll all be done. No, it's not a one and done. It's never one and done. Let me be clear. But that's another misconception: is we're going to do this and it's going to be short and sweet, and you're going to make a decision. One, you won't hear the judge's decision. Let's start with that. So you won't hear the judge's decision. You'll get it under advisement, which means your attorney will be notified in the mail. And it doesn't happen automatically. And if it does, it's a temporary order that stays in place until the final judgment. That might not be for 2+ years. So this whole timeline of something happened today and you went into court and the next day you lose your children. No. You're not going to be arraigned and go to jail and have your criminal trial done in a day. You're not going to have the same thing happen with losing your children. It may be a temporary thing, but again, it's never going to be a permanent thing. So it's comical. You have to kind of treat that as it's an abbreviated version for fun. And that's the big difference.
Well, they have 90 minutes, or if it's a television show, they've got a lot less than that. So they have to do quite a good synopsis and keep the story interesting. So, it is funny to hear that. I know that I had no idea coming to you for the first time. I mean, I didn't even know there's a lot of things you don't know. You don't know the process. Oftentimes you don't know what your assets and liabilities are if you're sharing those with somebody else and they aren't forthcoming. There's a lot of things that you don't know, and it's not usually a smoking gun that just comes up in court though. I mean, usually you have documentation that you request and everybody gets to see it ahead of time. There's not like a aha right there in the court. You might have a strategy, but it's not a surprise to anyone usually.
It's never a surprise. Let me be clear. Never, ever, ever. You're not going to be able to go, well, this is the gun that killed you, isn't it? No, let's be clear. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen in any of those situations. Can I sway the judge because I have this document that clearly shows this is what you said when you said something different? Sure. I can prove in some fashion that you weren't being truthful. But is it going to be that smoking gun? Is it going to turn the judge and go, absolutely, you're right, Nicole's client is right, and you're wrong? No, it's just one more factor that the court can look at and go, I believe Erica when she said this because she was truthful about this when her ex wasn't, because we have these 5 documents that all show that he's a liar. That's how you sway a judge. So no smoking gun. And along with the same lines is, I'm not going to break somebody on the stand. Somebody's not going to break down crying and going, oh my God, you're right. I actually abused my child. Again, not going to happen. So these are like the favorite myths of, I can get that person to do it. I could be the best attorney in the world. It doesn't happen.
That is so interesting you say that because I mean they have that on TV all the time. Like somehow the attorney is able to coax the information out, or they slip up because of how good the attorney is. So that's always interesting. But I also wanted to mention, even when you think that you've got a good case and you've got good points to make, like let's say you hire a forensics attorney, the other side knows that you hired that. They eventually give you the information, but then they send over questions saying, hey, we want to know what the credentials are of that guy because they want to try to pick that apart if they can. We want to know what you found and what you're going to say. I mean, they literally ask for your entire strategy. There's not even secrets when you hire somebody to sleuth around and figure out what's really going on with the other side. I mean, it's amazing.
And I think that's, one of the biggest examples is if you watch My Cousin Vinny. Great line in there where Joe Pesci's sitting there saying, hey, you know what? I asked for this and the guy just gave me all of his stuff. I can't believe it. And Marissa Tomei turns to him and goes, dummy, it's the rules. And it is the rules. So yes, it's always funny because I find that's probably one of the lines that I like the best, because I'm like, duh, there is no smoking gun. I have to share it. Now, whether or not you choose to look for it and read it is a different story. I mean, there's attorneys that will go, I'm going to bombard you with paperwork. And, you've all seen that on Suits where you go, oh, I made a request. Oh, look, the entire conference room is full all the way up to the ceiling. Yes. Can that happen? Sure. It's not going to happen in family cases, but it certainly will happen in high-powered corporate cases because they want you to find that needle in a haystack. But you can find that needle in a haystack. But again, not that smoking gun.
Yeah, that is so true. So the other thing that you see, and something that you mentioned, was, oh, someone might cry on the stand. Now, or admit something. And it might be right after the judge screams at them, like, oh, and the whole situation with Jack Nicholson saying, the truth, you can't handle the truth. I mean, well, they were, he was very rude to other people as well in that movie. And you see that all the time. It's you can't really you're gonna get kicked out if you do that, aren't you?
You're going to get kicked out if you do it. You're going to get kicked out when you go, judge, just give me a little bit of latitude. I'll put it together now. And usually the judge will go, counsel, give me your offer of proof, which means shut up, answer my question, tell me why it's relevant. And maybe I'll let you continue, maybe I won't. But yeah, a lot of times the judges, if they're good at their job, and most of them are, is they're going to put a kibosh to any unprofessionalism. You can't even approach the witness. You don't just walk up to the witness and go, "Hi." That doesn't happen. You don't get to stand right next to them. There's a spot that you have to stand at, and you have to have that conversation from there. And then you have to ask permission to even approach the witness. So, again, these are all elaborate for show TV things. But again, if you're out of line, the judge is going to go, "One more comment, counsel. I'm going to throw you out of the courtroom." That actually does happen. I will agree with that part of it. But a lot of times they'll go, "Counsel." And okay, I'm done. I get one freebie. That's all I get. Otherwise, there are going to be sanctions. They'll let you continue, but there's going to be sanctions on you, and you're not going to be able to show yourself and pretend like you're a show person and go, "Oh, well, this is how it happens in TV." No, no, no. Let's be clear. Professionalism at all times. It's your honor. It's hey, not "Hey, Sally." No, none of that is going to be tolerated in the courtroom. So it's very showman-like when it comes to that aspect in TV.
I'm thinking Richard Gere in Chicago. You've got the girls, he's like coming down the stairs, he's got a way to twist everything around. Really you're just trying to use the actual facts to win the case, and not be crazy, because that's frowned upon. I mean,
Absolutely. And I
mm.
think another big thing is when people object. Objection, Your Honor. Sometimes they stand up in the movie, sometimes they don't. Kind of depends. Again, your butt better be out of that seat in any court in Massachusetts. And you can't just say objection. It's basis, and the judge will wait for you to give a real reason. Hearsay, not relevant, something, right? It's not just objection, sustained. Like, that's not how it works. We need to have an actual reason. Now, some courts, the judges will be a little bit lenient, or they know what's going on. But 9 times out of 10, you better give a legitimate explanation for that objection. There has to be a basis. And there's, I think, like 20 objection basis that you can do. But you have to do it. And it's always funny when somebody goes, "Well, let me show you this picture. I'm going to show you this picture." And then they just start talking. And I'm going to have this in evidence. And I'm going, "What? Where's your foundation? You didn't ask any questions." So how are you getting that in? And nobody ever says to opposing counsel, "Do you object to that exhibit?" We always have to ask opposing counsel if they object to the document we're submitting. So all of that is never existent in the movies.
And speaking of the movies, along with saying objection all the time, I feel like in the back of the court, there's always they're racing the clock, and they're trying to get this witness that they had to find, who was hidden away because they thought they were going to get killed by the mafia, and oh my God, or they're watching the back of the room, and then this person shows up, and there's this loud gasp in the courtroom by everyone, and it's like, oh my God, they had one piece of evidence and they were trying to get it in. I mean, it's crazy, some of the stuff that happens in the movies, and it's exciting. But I've never seen you frantically calling your people from the office for any information that is all of a sudden you just thought of, that's gonna last minute win the case for you. I mean, how does that happen?
Not only that, but the reality is it usually doesn't exist. And if it does, I'm going to have my entire file with me. Like, it's not something that, "Oh, I magically found this morning, Your Honor. I couldn't give out notice." I've had one sort of similar issue in 20 plus years, and that was because the witness on the stand testified that she was working for Aunt Sally. Except Aunt Sally died 3 years prior. I didn't know this because it wasn't my family and I don't know anything. And we walked out of the courtroom at the end of it, and my client goes, No, I'm pretty sure she's not around. And he did some digging after the trial was ended and pulled up the obituary and said, "Here you go, that's on Sally." And I went, "Oh." The case was over. So there was no real smoking gun. Now, did I bring it back into court? Did I bring it to the judge's attention? Yes. I asked the judge to open the case and have a new trial, an extended trial, because I had new evidence. My point here was to say, Judge, unequivocally, she is lying, bold-faced lying to the court. And I was able to get that hearing. The judge did listen to it, and the judge actually said, notwithstanding that, I didn't believe a word that she said, but that was probably the biggest smoking gun I've ever had. And that was just a fluke, because you don't say you work for somebody that's dead. Just saying.
Now that is a great that you guys should write up a little script on that. A little movie script. I mean, so that's super interesting. Um, do people feel like once they get the verdict, that's the end? I know I used to feel that way, but now I know it's not going to be the end till I'm dead. But what do people actually think?
Well, a lot of times, again, you're going to get that temporary order. So you're going to have that temporary order in place. You're going to get that about a week after you go to court. And again, you're not saying anything. You're just standing there looking pretty. But if you do go to trial, then again, the judge will take it under advisement, or the judge will enter a judgment on that. The issue is that if it's family law related, anything relating to the children is modifiable at any point in time. Let me be clear. Anything pertaining to the children is modifiable at any time. Now, obviously, we have to have some parameters, but the reality is that's really the standard. So if you lose your job, you're going to want to come in and ask for a lower child support. If your ex is abusing your child, you're going to want to come in and change the parenting schedule. If you happen to remarry and your spouse is living in Connecticut, maybe you want to relocate out of the state. Maybe you've lost your job, and as a result, you don't have the health insurance and you need your spouse to carry it. Maybe the kids are getting older and they're going off to college and you guys can't agree on the college expenses. These are all very simple, everyday things that happen in life. So, yeah, all that is, it's a judgment until it's not. So we're going to come into court. We're going to look to modify it. We're going to look to make those changes, because we want to make sure that the children's best interest is always occurring. And unfortunately, those life-changing events happen. And as a result, we need to make sure the children are protected.
And there you go. There's always something to argue about, and life is always changing. So, yeah, the case never ends.
It never ends, at least until they're emancipated.
So is there anything else that we didn't cover today? I know those are kind of the big ones that people always ask. What's your idea of what the biggest misconception is of everything that we've talked about? Like what constantly comes up that people think is real, but it's not?
I think it's a little combination of everything that we talked about, but certainly I think the biggest issue is always, well, why can't I just get a decision right now? Of course he's going to tell me. Um, that's the biggest part that nobody can understand is, well, we just had the hearing. Tell me what happened. I don't understand. What do you mean I'm walking out of here without it? That, I think, is the hardest part to get, because you don't have that anywhere else. You don't have those issues coming up. So I think that's probably the biggest stumbling block for clients, because they need to get over that. That, judges aren't going to make that decision. They're not going to make it in front of you. They don't want you to kind of go crazy. They don't want you to get upset. They don't want bailiffs having to run over and escort you out. So it's just easier for them to go, okay, go away. And the other thing is, they're going to look at the evidence. They're going to look at what they were told. They're going to look at the documentation. They're going to look at the briefs. They're going to look at all that stuff. So we actually want them to take that time to do it.
And you've heard it here first, folks. Justice takes time. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a very interesting interview. Lots of myths dispelled, and Now we know. So if anyone out there is looking for help with a family case or a real estate case, please give Nicole and her team a call because they are fantastic. It's Reeves Valley. They are in Worcester and they are amazing. So we look forward to seeing you all next week, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.